I'm starting a new project. It's called Project Nova for a new old video adventure, which is a kind of awkward NASA-ish acronym. Basically, long story short, I'm going to be making a video with this Handycam from around 2000, this old iMac G3, and a bunch of other old stuff. It's taken me a really long time to make this video, like just this project introduction video, which is kind of embarrassing. I kept recording pieces and shooting B-roll and then throwing it out and starting over. And you know what? I'm just going to go for it. This is not going to be the best video or the cleanest video, but it'll be good enough. I just want to get this project off the ground so I can start making the real content, the meat of it. So before I talk about the what exactly I'm doing, I want to talk a bit about the why. So I really like old computers. I have a growing collection of old computers, and honestly, it's starting to become a bit of a problem because the place I live in isn't that big. And anyway, unfortunately, what I found is that after a brief period of extreme excitement for a new machine, they just kind of sit around. So I'll pick up a machine, maybe on eBay, maybe in person. I'll fix it up a bit, set up the software. Usually I'll reinstall the OS, put some tools on it. And then, unless I need it to bridge to another even older machine, it'll probably just sit there, and maybe once in a blue moon I'll pull it out to do some specific weird thing, but for the most part they just collect dust, which is really sad. These are nice old machines that used to be used for so much, and I had designs on using them for so many cool things, and they're just sitting there. So that led me to start thinking, what do you do with old machines? What can I do with these old machines? Well, one obvious answer that everyone kind of defaults to is games. And, games are fun. There's a good reason that people default to that answer. Pretty much everyone, I think, has at least one old game, either on console or computer, that, it's vaguely remembered. You go look it up, try to dig it up, maybe find a physical disc of it, find out it doesn't work properly on a new machine, but now you have this old machine which it runs properly on, you get the full experience that you would have had back then, and it's a huge nostalgia trip. But I think there's another reason why people default to games. It's not just that games are fun, and we have fond memories of them, but also that it's very obvious what you do with a game. You play it, you get the game, and then you play it. It tells you what to do, pretty much. That's as opposed to a lot of the other stuff you might use these old machines for, which is either a lot more niche, a lot more complicated, or a lot more open-ended. So what am I really getting at here? Well, the thing is, games are only half the story. I really feel that by looking at these machines solely as gaming machines, yes, games are an important part of the history. Pretty much every computer platform ever has been used for games, whether it was designed for it or not. But these machines were used for serious work. Even something like this iMac, these machines were used for all kinds of productivity and content creation tasks. There's a whole nother story to these machines. There's my 30 seconds, 5 seconds that I took like 3 minutes to get to. So I've done a little poking around in this area. I usually install some of this software on these machines. All my Macs have iLife on them, some version of iLife. I have at least one XP machine with an old version of Adobe Suite, and of course these typically have a zillion different word processors and that sort of thing on them. But then you start thinking, okay, I have these tools, now what do I do with them? And this goes back to what I was saying about a lot of these tasks being a lot more open-ended. See, with a game, like I said, you open the game, you play it. But what do you do with something like, say, even iMovie? It's for making home videos, but what is a home video? What are you going to put into this thing? What are you going to get out of it? Anyway, I know there are people who just open these old apps and just play around with them, and I occasionally do this. But the thing is, for me, I don't really generally work this way, and because of my situation, with having way too many machines and way too small a space, I can't actually keep any of my retro machines permanently or even semi permanently out. I have to pull them out, use them, and then put them away pretty quickly. And that's, not a ton of work, but it's enough that I usually won't pull out the machines, especially something like the iMac, which is big and heavy and takes up a lot of space, unless I have a really specific reason for doing it. So, long story short, I think that was about 5 minutes and maybe 30 seconds of actual content. I need a project. I'm a very project oriented person, and a project would give me a reason, that specific reason, to pull out the old machines. So, I'm going to take a brief aside and go into my own history with some of these old machines a bit. I have these vague childhood memories of computer club in elementary school. We were doing, I think it was at lunchtime, maybe after school. We were doing all these computer and sort of multimedia things on these iMac G3s, very much like this one, although ours were a different color, I think. This was the early 2000s, early mid 2000s, maybe. So the whole multimedia thing, that was the buzzword of the time. So, one specific thing I remember doing is a video project. I remember shooting some video with a camcorder. It was a pretty early mini DV camcorder, probably a few years old at that point, with the intent of editing it and making some sort of video. Unfortunately, I never finished it. I wish I could say, that there was a good reason for that, but I was like 12 or something. Maybe I moved schools, maybe computer club was canceled, maybe the year ended. I don't remember. I kind of want to go back and do something kind of like that. Obviously, it's not going to be the same thing exactly, but something like that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a video using this iMac G3 and, for the hell of it, mostly other technology contemporary to about the time I would have done it. As I alluded to earlier, this project kind of started off as Let's Play with iMovie because I wanted to do something with this iMac G3. But from that kind of starting point, I started thinking, okay, well, if I want to play with iMovie, I need some video to edit. You need video to edit in your video editor. And I started thinking, well, where am I going to get that footage? So most of the videos I shoot on my phone, which works fine. I mean, it's not the best quality, but it's good enough for YouTube. Thing is, it spits out full HD MPEG 4 AVC, which is not going to work with an old version of iMovie. So, next thing I knew, I'd bought an old camcorder, and the next thing I knew after that, I was thinking, oh, I'd like to add some photos, and I had a period camera, and then it kind of, settled down on let's do it with as much period technology as possible. At this point, I've talked a lot about the project in general and making an old video, but I haven't talked at all about what kind of video I'm going to make, which is kind of important if you're doing a video project. So to be clear, I do want to do an actual video project. This is not going to be a bunch of clips cut together semi-randomly for the purpose of cutting together some clips semi-randomly. I want to do an actual defined project with maybe not a script, but certainly an idea, an end product in mind, something well defined. I do want to keep scope reasonable, so I don't want to do something huge. For the longest time, I was saying to myself as I was planning this project, I'm going to just do a cooking video. It ticks a lot of boxes. It's an actual video project. It's very reasonably scoped. I can do it at home, and it's something that might have been made in the early 2000s. Someone might have gotten bored and made a cooking video. It does have some downsides, like I'm a terrible cook, so yeah. Another possibility is to do something similar to the content I usually do, which is retro tech, technology reviews, that sort of thing. The thing is, I'd have to do it quite a bit differently to how I normally do it, which would be an interesting challenge, but it's something I gotta do some thinking about. There's a few things that I've straight up said I'm not going to do. I'm not going to do a vacation video, as period appropriate as that would be, because I don't want to drag all this old stuff with me, and it's not like people are really vacationing much right now anyway. Okay, now that I've rambled on long enough, let's break it down and go through what exactly I'm doing specifically. Formally enough. I will be making a video. It will be a actual video project with a defined idea and end goal. It's going to be super amateurish, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be professional. And I'm going to try to make something that someone might have made in 2003, although not a strict requirement. The length of that video will be around 5 minutes. Although, once again, I'm not super picky about it. If it ends up more like 10 minutes, or I have to cut a ton of footage and I only have 3 minutes, that's fine. But I'm not going to be doing a massive 50-minute, 1 hour, 2 hour project. It's not that. That video will include video, pictures, music, and sound effects. It'll be a full multimedia presentation. And ideally, I want to try to make as much of that stuff on the old machine as possible. Speaking of old machines, I'll be using technology from about 2003, or really 2001 to 2005. That includes this lovely old iMac G3, this camcorder, this camera, and most of the software is from around that period. I'm not going to be super picky about it, but I want to generally use stuff that people would have had at the time, even if it's a bit older, or stuff that's a bit newer, but functionally pretty much the same as something someone would have had at the time. The finished product will be a DVD, specifically a DVD video disc that should play in a DVD player, not that I have one. I think this is reasonable, especially towards the end of the period of interpretation. DVD players were starting to become common, at least in my part of the world, so it would have been an okay medium for sharing. Arguably, a videotape would be better, more universal, but that's more annoying to do from a machine like this, and I also don't have a VCR, because why would I have a VCR? I will, of course, upload the video to YouTube, but I'm not going to try doing it from the old iMac. It is theoretically possible, maybe, with 10.4 Fox, but I think that's just going to be a lot of unnecessary aggravation, and it's besides the point in my mind. I'm going to document this entire project as a video series, which is what you're watching right now. That video series and all the planning for this will be done with modern tools on modern hardware. Some of it I'm tempted to also do on the retro machines, but like I said, my retro machines are pretty inconvenient for me. And with how much stuff I'm trying to juggle, right, it's just easier to save myself the aggravation and stick with familiar tools for the parts that I feel are kind of besides the point. The focus for the old tech is on making the video itself. So there it is. That's Project Nova, Project New Old Video Adventure. Awkward, corporate, cool acronym. I'm really excited for this project. It's something I've been thinking about at least certainly since I've got this iMac. I think even before then. And I've put it off. Finally, I just got to put something out there. And to be clear, it's probably going to take me about a year. That's kind of the timeline I'm working with. And I'll be releasing periodic updates talking about various aspects of the project. But it's stuff I'm super excited for. I think it's going to be really interesting. It might crash and burn. I think I will get something out of it at the end, but it's possible the whole thing will crash and burn, or I'll run into some unforeseen issues. But that's all part of the journey. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be cool. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.